Good day, learners. Welcome to our channel, Technical Minds for Society. In today's video, we will try and understand the basics of programming and types of programming. So, before starting the video, I would like to request all of you to consider subscribing and liking the video. So, coming back to today's video, firstly, we will try and understand the term programming. So program is basically a set of instructions used to make computer do some task like adding two numbers, subtracting two numbers, etc. So programming is a way to instruct the computer to perform various tasks. Now programming is a very creative task. There is no right or wrong way to solve a problem. In the same way, there is no right or wrong way to paint a picture, right? So computer programs or softwares are what makes computers work. Without software, modern computers will be just complicated machines for turning electricity into heat, right? So it's a software on your computer that will be running your operating system, browser, email, games, movie players. So these three concepts are the basic logical structures in computer programming. First one is sequence. Sequence means running instructions in the given order. Then we have selection. That means making a choice. If we have two paths, which path will be selecting? That will be selection. And repetition, doing the same thing more than once, that is also known as iteration, right? So these three basic logical structures we use in computer programming. Now add to these concepts the ability to deal with inputs and outputs and to store the data somewhere, and you have the tools to solve all the majority of the computing problems. So next slide show you a few programming applications in real world, right? So first one is traffic lights. You might have seen there is a timed traffic light system, right? So how that time is being set up based upon the iterations, the selection, and the sequence, that particular set of traffic lights work, right? Then we have some coffee machines, which when you press a certain button, then the coffee come out from that machine, right? Then we have smart lights that sense the humans presence and then accordingly works, or based upon your movements, the commands you are giving, based upon that it will work. Then we have facial recognition doorbells. Then self-driving cars are there, smart ovens are there, right? So these are few applications we have. Now here comes the question, how the programming is implemented in real life, right? So we'll be making use of programming languages here. So unfortunately computers don't understand the language like English, Hindi, Punjabi, right? So we have to use a programming language. Now they understand to give them instructions, right? There are very wide range of different programming languages, all of which have their own merits, and certain languages are better suited to particular type of task or application, right? So there is no one language that will be called as the best language, right? So depending upon the requirements or the application you want to use it for, based upon that you will be selecting the given language out of the others. So there are different paradigms of programming based upon which different types of programming languages are there, right? So these are the five programming paradigms, or based upon which the programming language types are there, that has been given here: procedural programming language, functional programming language, scripting programming language, logical programming language, and object oriented programming language. Now procedural programming language is the programming language that will be using a set of functions and instructions and some statements that will be executed in a certain order only, right? So if you want to perform certain task, that set of instructions or set of functions should be in the proper order, right? Otherwise the output you will be getting, that might not be the required output. So few examples are there for programming language of procedural type, that are basic, C, Fortran, Java, and Pascal. So these are the procedural programming language. We have small procedures here for each subtask we'll be doing, right? And these routines you call it as, or procedures you call, they will be used at the required times in the certain order. Then the next type we have is functional programming language. So it is a programming paradigm or language in which we try to bind everything in the mathematical function style, right? So there is declarative type of programming style which is followed here. So in this case, more focus is on what to solve rather than how to solve, right? So functional programming languages will support popular concepts which are used like abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism, right? Then we have functional programming language, uh, which are, okay, basically we use the conditional expressions here, right? So we have mathematical functions which will be using some conditional expression based upon which selection is to be done, or the recursion or the iteration is to be done, right? And these are basically support two basic features. Higher order functions are used here, and lazy evaluation features are used here. And it do not support any flow control, so no loop statements or conditional statements like if else or switch statements are used here. So you will be creating a function, making a function call, based upon that your functional programming language will be working. And after this, the next language type we have is scripting programming language. Now the scripting language is basically a language in which instructions are written in the written for the runtime environment, right? So you don't have to compile the program first and then uh, run it, rather it will be interpreted, right? So new functions will be glued to the complex system, and scripting language is a language which is designed for integrating and communicating with other programming language. So few advantages are there for scripting languages. First, it is easy to learn, right? And second, editing is really fast in this case. Then we have more interactivity in this case because visualizations will be used in this case, right? So functionality is very creative in this type of language. We have different libraries which are part of scripting languages, and they will help in creating new applications in the web browsers and will be different from the normal programming language. Now what are the applications we have for scripting languages is, these are basically used in your web applications, right? Or it is used in games application and multimedia related applications. So you might have heard about PHP or JavaScript. So these come under the scripting languages part, where we have to have an interface for communicating between different programming languages, right? So scripting languages are basically used in server side as well as client side. And on server side we may basically use PHP, JavaScript, Perl, etc. And on client side we use the JavaScript, Ajax, jQuery, etc., right? So these are also helpful in case you are uh, doing some system administration part, right? So shell, Perl, Python, these are some applications or examples of scripting languages. And also if you want to create some plugins or extensions for the existing application, so when you open your Mozilla Firefox or any other browser, you might have seen there sometimes come the notification for some extensions, right? So that extensions are written in or created using these scripting languages. Then the next type of language we have is logic programming language. Now logical programming is a type of programming paradigm in which we use some logic circuits to control the facts and rules about the problems, right? How to represent it. So logic is used to represent knowledge, and then we use inference to manipulate it, right? So it will be telling the model about how to accomplish a goal rather than what goal to accomplish, right? So we don't tell the system what is to be done. We just tell the system how it is to be done, right? So these type of languages are used where we have some fault diagnosis to do, natural language processing systems, some planning is to be done, and latest machine learning applications. In that case, we use the logic programming language. Few examples of this type of languages are EBSYS, cycle, alice, ALF, that stands for algebraic logic functional programming language, right? So suppose we have an example here, we want to check whether an year is a leap year or not. So how we are doing it, we are providing the statements based upon which the leap year is there or not, that is to be checked, right? So this is the example here. And next we move to the object-oriented programming language. Now object-oriented programming language refers to the language that uses the objects in programming. Now its main aim is to implement the real world entities like inheritance, hiding, polymorphism, etc. in programming. So basically we want to bind the data together and the function together based upon which that will be operating on them, right? So we have some data elements and some functions. Those functions will be working using those data elements. So that is why we need to bind them together so that no other part of the code can access this data except that function. So few examples are there like Java, C++, Python. These are the object-oriented programming languages. So it focuses on the objects that developers want to manipulate rather than the logic which is required to manipulate them, right? So this programming approach is well suited for the programs that are very large. So you want to create different modules for it. Complex problems are there, or which is to be actively updated or maintained, right? So this include the programs for manufacturing and design as well as mobile applications also, right? So also it can be used for manufacturing system simulation softwares. Now the structure or the building blocks of object-oriented programming include classes, objects, methods, and attributes. So what are these? So classes are basically user-defined data types that will be acting as the blueprint for individual objects, attributes, or methods, right? You can create your own class or specifically your own data type, right? Then objects are the instances of that class which is created with specifically defined data, right? So class will be a general form and object will be specific form of that particular class, and object will be corresponding to your real world objects. Like vehicle can be a class. In vehicle, different types of objects will be there. In vehicle, two tires vehicles could be there, that will be one type of object. If we have jeeps and cars, that will be another type of object, right? So when class is defined initially, the description is the only object that is defined. Then we have the methods. These are the functions that are defined inside a class that will be describing the behaviors of the object, and each method will be contained in class definition start with a reference to the instance object. Additionally, the subroutines contained in an object will be called the instance methods. So programmers will use the methods for reusability or keeping functionality encapsulated inside one object at a time. So attributes are defined in the class template and represent the state of an object. Objects will have data stored in the attributes field, and class attributes belongs to the class itself. And object-oriented programming is based on the following principles: encapsulation, abstraction, inheritance, and polymorphism, right? So let us try to understand in brief what are these four principles we use. So encapsulation is basically the principle that states that all important information is contained inside an object and only select information is exposed, right? So if I am going for a banking application, I am logging it into through a customer account, so I'll not be getting all the information about the bank, right? How much money is there in the bank, in all the accounts, and how many people have accounts over there, right? So all this information will not be visible to me. That will be visible to the persons who are dealing with that information, or who has some privileges to do that, right? So as a customer, I'll be getting the information of my account only, right? So this is basically the real world analogy of encapsulation. So the implementation and state of each object are privately held inside a defined class, and other objects do not have access to this class or the authority to make any changes. They are only able to call a list of public functions or methods. This characteristic of data hiding provides greater program security and avoids unintended data corruption. And second feature we have is abstraction. So abstraction is the process in which objects only reveal internal mechanisms that are relevant for the use of the other objects, hiding any unnecessary implementation code, right? So the derived class can have the functionality, its functionality extended. So this concept can be helpful to developers to more easily make additional changes or additions over time, right? So if they want to add something later on in that stage, so they don't have to change the whole script, right, or the whole code. That is the use of abstraction. Then we have inheritance. So classes can reuse code from other classes. So in object oriented programming, the main focus is on recursion and reusability of the code, so that in future if any changes are to be made or any application is to be extended, it will be easier, right? So inheritance, classes will be reusing the code from another classes. So there will be some relationships between the subclasses and the main class, right? So subclass relationships and the subclasses between objects can be assigned, right? So that developers can reuse common logic while still maintaining a unique hierarchy, right? So this property of object oriented programming will force a more thorough data analysis. It reduces the development time and also ensures a higher level of accuracy. Then comes the fourth feature, that is polymorphism. Now, objects are designed to share behaviors and they can take on more than one form, right? So, suppose you are writing a program in which you want to calculate the area. Now, your object or your function can be called, or your class can be called as the area itself, but the types of methods we use to calculate, they will be different. For example, if you are calculating the triangular area, that will be using the different formula, and if you are calculating the square area of a square, that will be using r square, right? So that will be using another formula. So formula will be different, but name of the function or name of the classes will be same. So that will help. Now this program will determine which meaning or uses is necessary for each execution of that object from a parent class. So reducing the need to duplicate the whole code. A child class will then be created. So we'll be writing a general class over there, and then we'll define the different behaviors. So based upon the inputs we'll be giving, based upon that we'll be selecting one of the following behaviors. So child class will be created, which will be extending the functionality of the parent class, and polymorphism will allow different types of objects to pass through the same interface. So these are the few features we have in object oriented programming language, and also you can see on the slide few more features. So I hope this video has provided you with some basic insights about the basics of programming and its concepts. If you have any queries or doubts, please leave a comment below, or you can find our email id in the channel description, right? If you found this video useful, please like and consider subscribing the channel. In the next video, we will try to understand the comparison between various famous programming languages which are used nowadays, right? So we'll not be going in detail for each and every language because there are hundreds of programming languages which are available. So we'll be considering only those languages which are famous in these times and used for various applications, right? And also we'll try and understand the advantages they provide, disadvantages they have, and the applications for which they are used. So that's all for this video. Thank you all for watching Technical Minds for Society, and keep learning. See you all in the next video.